Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7. So yes, the breaking news is that a Boba Fett movie seems to be on again at Lucasfilm. It is not quote-unquote official, which means that Lucasfilm themselves have not come out and said, yep, that's exactly what's happening. So let's just break down the history of Boba Fett movies in general and get to the place where we can have some perspective on this breaking news. So cast your mind back to 2015. At that time, they were throwing the first Star Wars celebration in a number of years, and there was a future filmmakers panel happening there. Josh Trank was supposed to appear at that panel because he was attached to a Star Wars movie in development. And unfortunately, he did not show up for that, and not too long afterward, we found out that whatever project he had been working on, he was no longer working on it. He had stepped away from that project. Later on, it was about at least a year or two later, we found out that it was in fact a Boba Fett movie that Josh was working on, and as to the fate of that Boba Fett movie, well, no one could say. Possibly it would sometime see the light of day, possibly not, and even if there was a Boba Fett movie, it might not look anything like whatever was being developed by Trank and company through Lucasfilm. Then we cut to yesterday, May 24th, and we hear from Borys at The Hollywood Reporter that sources are telling him that James Mangold is attached to co-write and direct a Boba Fett movie for Lucasfilm, and Simon Kinberg is the gentleman who will be co-writing the movie with Mangold. Now, James Mangold has a pretty decent resume, I would say. Most recently, he is the director and writer of Logan. That would be the last Wolverine movie that came out. Was also the director for the Wolverine movie before that, as well as Walk the Line. That was the Johnny Cash biopic, and Girl Interrupted. So he's got a pretty decent resume, to say the least. As for Borys from The Hollywood Reporter, well, he has a pretty good track record for stories like this, but in the whole trust but verify vein, I went to see what Anthony Breznican at Entertainment Weekly is saying. He's their senior writer, and he's got some great ins with Lucasfilm, and he is saying that they are not returning any inquiries about this, so they, aren't going on the record about it whatsoever, but his own sources, Breznican's own sources, are confirming the story that he is hearing from The Hollywood Reporter. So we have to be careful about that word confirming, because it is a rather slippery little word. And of course, until Lucasfilm comes out and says, hey, we're doing this, it is not really quote unquote confirmed. That being said, if you've got two reporters from two entertainment publications talking to their own confidential sources and having those sources say the same things, well then, I think you can probably put a little money behind this and feel safe about it. There's one additional bit of information that comes from Breznican's story, though. He says that some of his sources are saying that the Boba Fett movie has not been greenlit and doesn't have a release date of any kind or any kind of production dates whatsoever, just that it is in development only. And apparently, now having a couple of names attached to it, like James Mangold and Simon Kinberg, well, maybe that doesn't mean that it's actually happening for real, but again, it does mean that the odds just certainly got a lot better for this one. And that's pretty much where we stand on the Boba Fett situation, but there is one additional footnote. The Hollywood Reporter story kicks up the old rumor about the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie and the fact that Stephen Daldry was allegedly in negotiations to direct, and that there is no script being developed just yet, just that, hey, Obi-Wan might be happening and Stephen Daldry might be a part of it, and that's it. But nothing new has been added to that narrative. It's just been attached to the whole Boba Fett movie story situation. Now, to put this in a little bit of perspective, just yesterday, man, time flies when you're having fun, but just yesterday on the episode of the podcast, the regular numbered episode, we talked about Ron Howard's interview with Chris Taylor of Mashable and about how there was a conversation that predated the sale of Lucasfilm to Disney where Kasdan and Kathleen Kennedy and George Lucas were talking, and the discussion was, what are the kinds of stories that Star Wars fans would love to see? And Solo, a Star Wars story, was supposed to be one of the ideas that came out of that meeting. And you have to imagine that a Boba Fett story would also have been one of the ideas to come out of that conversation as well. Obviously, that has yet to be confirmed too, but Lord knows there's going to be some digging happening over the next weeks, months, years to try and find out more about that. And it's funny too that if you spend any time on social media, chances are you've seen a little collage go around. It usually has a picture of, say, Boba Fett and Obi-Wan and Yoda and Darth Maul, and it says vote for which one you want to see in a Star Wars spin-off. And so now we've got 2 of the 4 under development, and as far as Yoda and Darth Maul, well, we can talk about them another time. But for now, that is going to do it for our breaking news update of the Boba Fett movie apparently being in development all over again at Lucasfilm. Stay with us for insights and analysis as more news comes out about this situation. But for now, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.